The year was 2478, and the Milky Way galaxy stretched endlessly in every direction. It was a vast collection of stars, planets, and mysteries waiting to be uncovered. But for most people living under the rule of the Solvian Galactic Empire, life was far from peaceful. The Empire controlled everything: trade routes, colonies, even communication between star systems. Humanity had spread across the galaxy, but it came at a cost. Alien civilizations resented human expansion, and tensions simmered like a pot ready to boil over. Captain Jae-ho Kim stood on the bridge of the Spearhead, one of the Empire's most advanced warships. His tall frame leaned slightly forward as he stared out the large viewport at the endless void of space. He was a man in his early 40s, with sharp features and dark eyes that seemed to see through anyone who crossed him. Despite his stern appearance, those who served under him knew he cared deeply about his crew. They respected him not just because he was their captain, but because he led by example. Today's mission was supposed to be routine. Patrol Sector 17B. Check for any signs of unauthorized ships and report back to headquarters. Nothing exciting ever happened in this part of the galaxy. Most days were filled with scanning empty sectors, eating bland rations, and trying not to fall asleep during long shifts. But today felt different. Jae-ho couldn't explain why, but something about the silence outside made his skin prickle. "Captain," Lieutenant Hai-Jin Park called out from her station near the center of the bridge. She was young, barely in her late 20s, with short black hair and an intense focus that belied her age. As the tactical officer, she was responsible for monitoring all incoming data and keeping the ship safe. "We've picked up an anomaly on long-range scanners." Jae-ho turned away from the viewport and walked over to her console. "What kind of anomaly?" he asked, his voice calm but laced with curiosity. Hai-Jin hesitated for a moment before answering. "It's big, larger than anything we've seen before. And it's moving faster than our fastest cruisers." Her fingers danced across the controls, pulling up a grainy image on the screen. The shape was unmistakable. It looked like a warship, sleek and angular, designed for speed and combat. But there was something off about it. Something familiar, yet impossible. "That can't be right," Jae-ho muttered, leaning closer to get a better look. "No human ship is capable of speeds like that. Not even ours." "I triple-checked the readings," Hai-Jin replied, her tone defensive. "It's real, Captain. Whatever it is, it's heading straight toward us." A murmur rippled through the bridge as the rest of the crew processed what they were seeing. Everyone knew how dangerous unknown ships could be. Pirates, rogue factions, or worse, alien invaders. None of them wanted to find out firsthand. "Hail them," Jae-ho ordered, stepping back to take command. "Let's see if they're friendly." Hai-Jin nodded and began broadcasting a standard greeting signal. For several tense minutes, nothing happened. The mysterious ship continued its approach without responding. Just when Jae-ho thought they might have to prepare for battle, the comms crackled to life. "This is Commander Min-Soo Lee of the Aegis Dawn," a deep, steady voice said in perfect Korean. There was no trace of fear or aggression, only calm authority. "Stand down. You are trespassing in restricted space." The entire bridge fell silent. Even Jae-ho froze mid-step, caught off guard by the words. Restricted space? This sector belonged to the Empire. Who did these people think they were? "Commander Lee," Jae-ho responded after regaining his composure. "This is Captain Jae-ho Kim of the Solvian Galactic Empire. Identify yourself and your intentions immediately." There was a pause on the other end, followed by a low chuckle. "The Empire? Still clinging to power after all these years, I see. Very well, Captain. We mean you no harm, but you must leave this area. Now." Jae-ho exchanged a glance with Hai-Jin, who looked equally baffled. Whoever these people were, they didn't seem intimidated by the Empire's reputation. In fact, they sounded almost amused. "Explain yourselves," Jeho demanded, his voice firm. "Who are you, and where did you come from?" Another pause, longer this time. When the voice returned, it carried a hint of sadness. "We are descendants of Earth, survivors of Operation Exodus. Surely someone in your empire remembers us." Operation Exodus. The name sent a jolt through Jeho's mind. He'd heard whispers of it during his training, a secret project launched centuries ago to save humanity from extinction. A colony ship sent deep into uncharted space, never to return. Most believed it had failed. Apparently, they were wrong. Before Jeho could respond, alarms blared across the bridge. The mysterious ship had changed course, accelerating toward them at an alarming rate. Their powering weapons. Hyjin shouted, panic creeping into her voice. "Evasive maneuvers." Jeho barked, gripping the railing as the ship lurched sideways. The crew scrambled to follow his orders, but it was clear they were outmatched. Whatever this ship was, it wasn't playing games as the two vessels closed in on each other. Jeho couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter view. Back on Solvia Prime, the heart of the Solvian Galactic Empire, Emperor Kyung-tae-ro sat in his throne room. The grand chamber was dimly lit, with holographic displays flickering across the walls, showing maps of the galaxy and live feeds from Imperial ships. Despite the advanced technology surrounding him, the Emperor's mood was dark. His sharp eyes scanned the reports in front of him, his lips pressed into a thin line. "Operation Exodus," he muttered under his breath, repeating the name as if it were poison. How could this have happened? Standing before him was Intelligence Minister Yoonji Choi, a woman in her 50s with short gray hair and an air of quiet authority. She held a datapad in her hands, its screen glowing faintly in the low light. Her job was to uncover secrets that sometimes even the Emperor didn't want to hear. Today was one of those days. "Your Majesty," she began cautiously, knowing how volatile the Emperor could be when provoked. "Our records confirm that Operation Exodus was real. It was launched centuries ago during Earth's final collapse. A self-sustaining colony ship carrying thousands of humans was sent deep into uncharted space. Officially, the mission was declared a failure after contact was lost." Kyung-tae leaned forward, resting his elbows on the armrests of his throne. "And unofficially?" Yoonji hesitated for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "Unofficially, there are rumors. Some say the colonists survived. Others claim they encountered alien species who helped them advance beyond anything we've achieved here. But until now, these were just stories, myths meant to give hope to desperate people." The Emperor's expression hardened. "Myths don't attack my warships, Minister. This is no myth. This is a threat." He stood abruptly, pacing back and forth across the marble floor. His robes swirled around him like storm clouds. If what Captain Jeho reported is true, if these descendants of Earth truly exist, they pose a danger to everything we've built. They're faster, stronger, and clearly more advanced than us. If word gets out that another human faction rivals the Empire. He trailed off, letting the implication hang in the air. Chaos would erupt. Rebellions would break out. The Empire's iron grip on the galaxy would weaken, possibly forever. "We need answers," Kyung-tae declared, stopping mid-step to glare at Yoonji. "Find me everything you can about Operation Exodus. I want to know where they went, how they survived, and why they've returned now. Leave no stone unturned." Yoonji nodded briskly. "Yes, Your Majesty." Without another word, she turned and left the chamber, her mind already racing through possible leads. Meanwhile, aboard the Spearhead, Captain Jeho Kim tried to make sense of the encounter with the mysterious ship. After narrowly avoiding destruction, he had ordered his crew to retreat to a safe distance while they regrouped. Now, The bridge was tense but quiet, everyone trying to process what they'd seen. Jeho sat in his chair, staring at the holographic display hovering above the central console. It showed the silhouette of the unknown vessel, the Aegis Dawn, alongside their own ship for comparison. The difference was staggering. While the spearhead was sleek and powerful, the Aegis Dawn looked like something out of a dream. Its design was elegant yet intimidating, with weapon systems that dwarfed anything in the Imperial fleet. "They're not bluffing," Lieutenant Hyjin Park said softly, breaking the silence. She stood beside Jeho, her arms crossed over her chest. "That ship, it's not just advanced. It's revolutionary." Jeho nodded slowly. "I know. But what bothers me most isn't their technology. It's their attitude. Did you hear Commander Lee? He spoke as if the Empire doesn't matter to him. As if we're nothing." Hyjin frowned. "Do you think he's telling the truth about being survivors of Operation Exodus?" "I don't know," Jeho admitted. "But if he is, then we've been lied to. For centuries." His thoughts drifted back to his training days, when instructors had glossed over Operation Exodus as a failed experiment. They'd said the colony ship had malfunctioned and disappeared without a trace. No one questioned it because humanity was too busy rebuilding itself after Earth's collapse. Now, it seemed the truth was far more complicated and dangerous. "Captain," called Ensign Jiun Lee, the communications officer, interrupting Jeho's musings. "We're receiving a priority transmission from headquarters." Jeho straightened in his seat. "Put it through." The hologram shifted, revealing Admiral Ji-1 Yoon, the head of the Imperial fleet. He was a stern man with piercing eyes and a voice that demanded obedience. "Captain Kim," he began without preamble. "Report your current status." Jeho summarized the events of the past few hours, leaving out no details. When he finished, the Admiral's expression was unreadable. "This changes everything," Ji-1 said finally. "You are to track the Aegis Dawn and gather intelligence on their capabilities. Avoid direct confrontation unless absolutely necessary. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir," Jeho replied, though unease coiled in his stomach. Tracking such a powerful ship felt like walking into a lion's den armed with nothing but a stick. After the transmission ended, Jeho turned to Hyjin. "Set a course to follow them. Keep our distance, but stay within scanning range." She nodded and relayed the orders to the navigation team. As the engines hummed to life, Jeho couldn't shake the feeling that they were stepping onto a path with no clear end. Whatever awaited them, it wouldn't be simple or safe. Over the next several days, the spearhead trailed the Aegis Dawn through uncharted territory. The rogue ship moved with purpose, occasionally pausing near derelict stations or abandoned moons. Each stop added another layer of mystery. What were they looking for? And why here? One evening, as Jeho reviewed the latest scans, he noticed something unusual. One of the derelict stations they passed had faint energy signatures emanating from it. At first glance, it appeared empty, but closer inspection revealed traces of recent activity. "Hyjin," he called, gesturing for her to join him. "Look at this." She studied the data, her brow furrowing. "It's old tech. Pre-Earth designs. Why would they care about something like this?" "That's what we need to find out," Jeho said firmly. "Prepare a shuttle. We're going down there." Hyjin hesitated. "Sir, regulations state." "I'm aware of the regulations," Jeho interrupted, his tone leaving no room for argument. "But if we wait for permission, we'll lose our chance. Trust me on this." Reluctantly, she agreed. Within an hour, Jeho and a small team boarded a shuttle and descended toward the station. As they landed, the eerie stillness of the place settled over them like a heavy blanket. Dust coated every surface, and the air smelled stale inside. They found remnants of ancient technology machines long forgotten by the Empire. Blueprints lined the walls, detailing weapons and engines far ahead of their time. Jieho's pulse quickened. Whoever had built this had known things the Empire hadn't discovered yet. "This isn't just a relic," he murmured, running his fingers over a rusted control panel. "It's a blueprint for survival." As he absorbed the implications, a single thought echoed in his mind. The Empire wasn't ready for this. The derelict station was cold and silent, its halls echoing with the faint hum of ancient machinery. Captain Jae-ho Kim led his team deeper into the structure, his boots crunching against layers of dust that had settled over centuries. The air smelled metallic, tinged with the faintest hint of decay. It was a place forgotten by time, yet somehow still alive with secrets. Jae-ho paused in front of a large display panel embedded in the wall. Its surface was cracked but functional, glowing faintly as he activated it with a touch. Lines of text scrolled across the screen, written in an archaic version of Korean that took him a moment to decipher. The words sent a chill down his spine. "Operation Exodus," he read aloud, his voice barely above a whisper. "Survival protocols. Emergency contingency plans." Lieutenant Haejin Park stood beside him, her eyes scanning the information rapidly. "This is incredible," she said, her tone hushed. "These designs, they're for energy shields, propulsion systems, even weapons. Technology we've only dreamed of." Jae-ho nodded grimly. "And they're using it. The Aegis Dawn isn't just advanced, it's built on knowledge like this." He turned to face his team, his expression hardening. "We need to understand why they came back now. What are they planning?" Before anyone could respond, a low rumble shook the station. Dust fell from the ceiling and the lights flickered ominously. Jae-ho instinctively reached for his sidearm, signaling for the others to stay alert. "They know we're here," he muttered under his breath. Minutes later, the source of the disturbance became clear. A group of figures emerged from the shadows at the far end of the corridor. They wore sleek, form-fitting suits marked with insignias unfamiliar to Jae-ho. Their leader stepped forward, his presence commanding despite the dim lighting. "Captain Jae-ho Kim," the man said, his voice calm but firm. "I am Commander Min-soo Lee of the Aegis Dawn. Welcome to our sanctuary." Jae-ho tensed, his hand still resting on his weapon. "Commander Lee," he replied cautiously, "why have you returned? And what do you want from us?" Min-soo smiled faintly, though there was no warmth in it. "You misunderstand. We didn't return. We were never gone. Our ancestors left Earth not to escape humanity, but to preserve it. To build something better, free from the corruption and greed that nearly destroyed us." His gaze swept over the team, lingering briefly on Haejin before returning to Jae-ho. "We watched your empire rise from afar. At first, we hoped you'd learn from Earth's mistakes. But instead, you repeated them. Exploitation, domination, fear. You call yourselves the Soviet Galactic Empire, but you're nothing more than tyrants clinging to power." Jae-ho felt a surge of anger at the accusation, but he forced himself to remain composed. The Empire brought order to chaos. Without it, humanity would have fractured into countless warring factions. And at what cost? Min-soo countered sharply. "Your so-called order comes at the expense of freedom. You suppress dissent, exploit resources, and crush anyone who opposes you. Tell me, Captain, how is that any different from the forces that drove humanity to near extinction?" The question hung in the air, heavy and unanswerable. Jae-ho opened his mouth to argue, but found himself hesitating. Deep down, he knew Min-soo wasn't entirely wrong. He'd seen the Empire's darker side firsthand, the brutal crackdowns, the propaganda campaigns, the endless expansion justified by vague promises of security. Yet, he also believed the Empire was necessary to protect humanity from external threats. "We're not here to debate philosophy," Jeho said finally, steering the conversation back to practical matters. If you truly care about humanity's future, then help us. Share your knowledge. Work with us to create something better. Minsu studied him for a long moment, his expression unreadable. It's too late for that, he said quietly. The Empire cannot be reformed. It must be dismantled. The words hit Jeho like a punch to the gut. Dismantling the Empire? The very idea was unthinkable. For all its flaws, the Empire was the foundation of human civilization in the galaxy. Without it, chaos would reign. You're asking for war, Jeho said, his voice tinged with disbelief. No, Minsu replied firmly. We're preparing for peace. But if the Empire chooses to stand in our way, he let the sentence trail off, leaving the implication hanging. Another tremor shook the station, stronger this time. Alarms blared in the distance, accompanied by the sound of approaching footsteps. Minsu glanced over his shoulder, then back at Jeho. Leave this place, now. If you stay, you'll regret it. Jeho hesitated, torn between duty and curiosity. Finally, he nodded. We'll go. But this isn't over. Minsu offered a slight bow, his expression unreadable. No, Captain. It isn't. Back aboard the Spearhead, Jeho replayed the encounter in his mind, trying to make sense of it. Minsu's words had struck a nerve, forcing him to confront uncomfortable truths about the Empire he served. Was it possible that the Empire's methods had grown too extreme? That their pursuit of control had come at too high a cost? Hyjin interrupted his thoughts as she entered the bridge. Sir, we've analyzed the data from the station. Those blueprints, they're revolutionary. If we could replicate even half of what they've developed. Jeho held up a hand, cutting her off. Forget the technology for now. Focus on understanding their motives. Why did they reveal themselves after all these years? What triggered this? Hyjin frowned. Maybe they saw an opportunity. With tensions rising between the Empire and alien factions, they might think now is the time to strike. Or maybe they're afraid, Jeho mused. Afraid that the Empire will find them eventually and try to destroy them. The thought weighed heavily on him. If the Empire viewed the Aegis Dawn as a threat, and they almost certainly would, it wouldn't stop until the rogue faction was eliminated. But how could Jeho justify attacking people who claimed to share his goal of protecting humanity? As the hours passed, Jeho grew increasingly restless. Every decision felt like walking a tightrope, one wrong step away from disaster. He knew he couldn't delay reporting back to headquarters much longer. Admiral Ji-1 Yoon would demand answers, and Jeho wasn't sure what to say. Finally, he made his choice. Sitting down at the communications console, he initiated a secure channel to Solvia Prime. When Admiral Yoon appeared on the screen, Jeho straightened in his seat, steeling himself for the conversation ahead. Admiral, he began, choosing his words carefully. We've gathered intelligence on the Aegis Dawn. They're descendants of Operation Exodus, as suspected. Their technology is unparalleled, and their intentions unclear. Yoon's expression darkened. Unparalleled, you say? Enough to challenge the Empire? Jeho hesitated. Potentially, yes. But sir, I believe they may be open to negotiation. If handled correctly, this could be an opportunity to strengthen humanity's position in the galaxy. The Admiral leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. Negotiation? Captain, these people are traitors. They abandoned Earth when it needed them most. Now they return, flaunting their superiority and questioning the Empire's authority. Do you really think they can be trusted? Jeho swallowed hard, knowing the truth of Yoon's words, but unwilling to give up hope. Sir, with respect, we don't have enough information to make that judgment. Rushing to conflict could escalate into a war we're not prepared for. For a moment, Yoon said nothing, his gaze boring into Jeho. Then he sighed, leaning back in his chair. Very well. Continue monitoring them, but do not engage unless provoked. I'll inform the Emperor and decide our next move. Relief washed over Jeho, though it was short-lived. As the transmission ended, he couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out for everyone. That night, Jeho stood alone on the observation deck, staring out at the stars. The vastness of space stretched endlessly before him, beautiful and indifferent. Somewhere out there, the Aegis Dawn drifted, carrying the hopes and fears of a forgotten branch of humanity. What happens now? He whispered to himself, his voice lost in the silence. He didn't have an answer. All he knew was that the choices he made next would shape the future, not just for the Empire, but for all of humanity. The tension aboard the Spearhead was palpable. Captain Jeho Kim sat in his quarters, staring at the blank wall while replaying every detail of his encounter with Commander Min-Soo Lee. The man's words echoed in his mind, his accusations against the Empire, his warnings about its tyranny, and his refusal to negotiate. Jeho couldn't shake the feeling that Min-Soo was right about some things. But how could he reconcile those truths with his duty to the Empire? On the bridge, Lieutenant Haijin Park worked tirelessly to decode the data they'd recovered from the derelict station. Her fingers flew across the console, piecing together fragments of information. She had always been loyal to the Empire, believing it represented humanity's best chance for survival. Yet, as she delved deeper into the rogue faction's technology and motives, doubt began to creep in. They're not just survivors, she muttered to herself, scrolling through lines of code. They're pioneers. Her thoughts were interrupted by a sudden alert flashing on her screen. At first, she assumed it was another system update or routine diagnostic. But when she pulled up the source of the signal, her blood ran cold. It wasn't coming from the ship's systems. It was coming from her own encrypted channel. Someone was watching. Haijin's heart pounded as she traced the signal back to its origin. To her horror, she realized it was being transmitted directly to Solvia Prime, to Admiral Ji-Won Yoon. Every movement of the Spearhead, every scan, every conversation, they'd all been relayed without her knowledge. No, she whispered, her hands trembling. This can't be happening. But it was. And she knew exactly who was responsible. Hours later, Haijin stood before Admiral Yoon via holographic transmission. Her face was pale, her voice shaky as she explained what she'd discovered. Or rather, what she hadn't discovered until now. I didn't mean for this to happen, sir, she stammered, avoiding his piercing gaze. I thought I was doing my duty, protecting the Empire. Admiral Yoon leaned forward, his expression unreadable. Explain yourself, Lieutenant. Haijin swallowed hard. When we encountered the Aegis Dawn, I sent coordinates to headquarters. I didn't trust Captain Kim's judgment. I thought he might sympathize with them. I wanted to ensure the Empire had all the information it needed. Yoon's eyes narrowed. You acted without orders? Yes, sir, she admitted, lowering her head in shame. But I believed it was the right thing to do. For a moment, there was silence. Then Yoon leaned back, a slow smile spreading across his face. You've done well, Lieutenant. Your actions may have saved countless lives. Relief washed over Haijin, but it was short-lived. As the transmission ended, she felt a pang of guilt gnawing at her conscience. What had she done? By betraying Jeho, she had put the entire crew and possibly the rogue faction at risk. Unbeknownst to Haijin, her betrayal set off a chain reaction. On Solvia Prime, Emperor Kyung-tae-ro convened an emergency war council. The news of the rogue faction's existence and their advanced technology had spread like wildfire among the Empire's highest-ranking officials. Fear and paranoia gripped the room as ministers debated the best course of action. We cannot allow this threat to grow unchecked, declared Defense Minister Seo Ki-jin Lim, slamming his fist on the table. If word gets out that another human faction rivals the Empire, it will inspire rebellion across the galaxy. Emperor Kyung-tae nodded grimly. Agreed. This so-called Operation Exodus must be erased. Completely. Admiral Yoon stepped forward, his tone confident. Your Majesty, I recommend launching a full-scale assault on the Aegis Dawn. With the coordinates provided by Lieutenant Park, we can strike swiftly and decisively. We'll seize their technology and eliminate any resistance. The Emperor considered the plan, his sharp eyes scanning the faces of his advisors. Finally, he gave a curt nod. Do it. Mobilize the fleet. Leave no survivors. Meanwhile, aboard the Spearhead, Jae-ho remained unaware of the storm brewing behind his back. He was focused on planning his next move. After days of deliberation, he decided to send a message to the Aegis Dawn, proposing a meeting under neutral terms. He hoped to open a dialogue to find common ground between the two factions. As he prepared to transmit the message, alarms blared across the ship. Red lights flashed, and the crew scrambled to their stations. Incoming ships, shouted Ensign Ji-yoon Lee, her voice trembling with panic. Multiple signatures detected. Jae-ho rushed to the viewport, his stomach sinking as dozens of Imperial warships emerged from hyperspace, surrounding them. Their weapons were already powered up, targeting both the Spearhead and the Aegis Dawn. Captain! Hae-jin cried, her guilt written all over her face. I didn't know they would come so soon. Jae-ho turned to her, shock and betrayal flashing in his eyes. What did you do? Before she could answer, the comms crackled to life. Admiral Yoon's voice boomed through the speakers. Captain Kim, stand down immediately. You are relieved of command. Surrender your vessel and prepare to assist in the destruction of the rogue faction. Jae-ho clenched his fists, anger boiling inside him. You betrayed us, Hae-jin. Betrayed me. She looked away, tears streaming down her cheeks. I thought I was protecting the Empire. There's no time for this, Jae-ho snapped, turning back to the controls. Ensign Lee, contact the Aegis Dawn. Tell them we're under attack. The young ensign nodded furiously, her hand shaking as she sent the distress signal. Moments later, a familiar voice responded. Captain Kim, this is Commander Min-soo Lee. We see the fleet. Hold your position, we're moving to intercept. Jae-ho hesitated, torn between gratitude and dread. Commander, we're outnumbered. If we fight, we'll lose. Then let us handle it, Min-soo replied firmly. Trust us, Captain. For once, trust someone other than the Empire. As the Aegis Dawn approached, the battle erupted. Imperial ships opened fire, their lasers cutting through space like streaks of lightning. The rogue faction retaliated with devastating precision, their weapons far superior to anything the Empire possessed. Explosions lit up the void as smaller vessels were obliterated, leaving trails of debris in their wake. On the bridge of the Spearhead, chaos reigned. Crew members shouted orders, desperately trying to evade the crossfire. Jae-ho gripped the railing, watching helplessly as his ship took hit after hit. Shields are failing. Hae-jin yelled, her voice cracking. We can't hold out much longer. Suddenly, the Aegis Dawn unleashed a massive energy pulse, disabling several Imperial ships at once. The tide of the battle shifted dramatically, forcing the fleet to retreat. Amid the confusion, a shuttle detached from the rogue vessel and docked with the Spearhead. Commander Min-soo Lee strode onto the bridge, his presence calm yet commanding. Captain Kim, he said, addressing Jae-ho directly. We need to leave, now. Jae-ho nodded, still processing the enormity of what had just happened. My crew will follow you, Min-soo interrupted. If they choose to stay, that's their decision. But if you want to live, you'll come with us. Without hesitation, Jae-ho turned to his crew. Anyone who wants to stay, do so. But know this, the Empire doesn't care about you. They never did. One by one, most of the crew chose to follow Jae-ho. Even Hae-jin, overwhelmed by guilt, begged for forgiveness. Reluctantly, Jae-ho agreed to let her join them, though he made it clear her loyalty would be tested. As the spearhead docked aboard the Aegis Dawn, the rogue faction's true strength became apparent. Their ship was a marvel of engineering, blending human ingenuity with alien-inspired designs. For the first time, Jae-ho allowed himself to hope, not for the Empire, but for something greater. The interior of the Aegis Dawn was unlike anything Captain Jae-ho Kim had ever seen. Sleek corridors, lined with glowing panels, stretched endlessly, humming softly with energy. The air smelled clean, almost sterile, and every surface gleamed as if polished daily. It wasn't just advanced, it felt alive, as though the ship itself were an extension of its crew. Commander Min-soo Lee led Jae-ho and his remaining team through the vessel, explaining their way of life along the way. "We built this ship to be self-sustaining," he said, his tone calm but proud. "Every system works in harmony, no waste, no excess. It's how we survived for so long." Jae-ho listened intently, taking in every detail. He noticed the absence of fear among the rogue faction's members. They moved with purpose, their eyes bright with hope rather than dread. It was a stark contrast to the rigid hierarchy and constant tension aboard. Imperial ships as they reached the central command center, Min-soo turned to face Jae-ho. "You've seen what we're capable of. Now it's time you understood why we exist." He gestured toward a large holographic display showing images of Earth before its collapsed lush forests, bustling cities, smiling faces. Then the scene shifted to devastation. Barren landscapes, crumbling buildings, and desperate crowds fighting for survival. "We left because humanity was killing itself," Min-soo continued, "not just through war or greed, but through ignorance. We wanted to start over to build a society based on cooperation, not domination. And we succeeded." Jae-ho nodded slowly, feeling both awe and unease. The vision Min-soo described sounded idealistic, almost too good to be true. Yet everything he'd seen so far suggested it was possible. "But now?" Jae-ho asked. "Why reveal yourselves now? Why risk everything?" Min-soo's expression darkened. "Because the Empire is spreading. Its reach grows wider every day, consuming resources, oppressing others, and leaving destruction in its wake. If we don't act, there won't be anything left to save, not even your precious empire." The words hit Jae-ho like a punch to the chest. He wanted to argue, to defend the empire he'd sworn to protect, but deep down, he knew Min-soo was right. The empire's methods were unsustainable, and its leaders cared more about power than progress. Over the next few days, Jae-ho worked closely with Min-soo and his people, learning about their technology and philosophy. He discovered that the rogue faction had formed alliances with several alien species, creating a coalition dedicated to peace and mutual growth. These partnerships were built on trust, something the Empire had never prioritized. Hae-jin Park struggled to adapt. Her betrayal weighed heavily on her conscience, and she found it difficult to earn the trust of the Aegis Dawn's crew. But Jae-ho encouraged her to keep trying, reminding her that redemption was possible, even within herself. One evening, Jae-ho stood alone in the observation deck of the Aegis Dawn, staring out at the stars. The vastness of space stretched endlessly before him, beautiful and indifferent. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of clarity. The Empire wasn't the future, it was the past. Humanity needed something better, something stronger. "Captain," Min-soo said, joining him unexpectedly, "I know this hasn't been easy for you, leaving behind everything you believed in." Jae-ho shook his head. "It's not about belief anymore. It's about survival for all of us. If the Empire continues down this path, it will destroy itself. And when it does, it could take the rest of humanity with it. Minsu studied him for a moment, then nodded. That's why we need someone like you. Someone who understands both sides. You can help us bridge the gap between the Empire and those who oppose it. Jeho hesitated, considering the weight of Minsu's words. What do you propose? We'll establish contact with other factions, human and alien alike, and form a united front against the Empire's tyranny. Not through violence, but through diplomacy. Show them there's another way. It was a bold plan, one that carried immense risks. But Jeho realized it might be the only chance to prevent total war. Slowly, he nodded. I'll do it, but I'll need your support. You have it, Minsu replied firmly. Together, we'll change the galaxy. Far away, on Solvia Prime, Emperor Kyung-tae-ro paced furiously across his throne room. News of the failed assault had reached him hours ago, and his rage showed no signs of abating. Admiral Ji Won-yun stood nearby, trying to remain composed despite the Emperor's wrath. How could this happen? Kyung-tae roared, slamming his fist against the armrest of his throne. An entire fleet wiped out by a single ship. Do you realize what this means? Yoon swallowed hard, choosing his words carefully. Your Majesty, the rogue faction's technology is unprecedented. Even our best engineers couldn't replicate it. But we can still strike back. No. The Emperor snapped, cutting him off. We cannot afford another failure. Not now. Not when rebellion is already brewing across the Empire. He paused, his sharp eyes narrowing as a new idea took shape. If force won't work, then we'll use fear. Spread rumors of their existence, paint them as traitors, cowards who abandoned humanity during its darkest hour. Make sure everyone knows they are enemies of the state. Yoon bowed deeply, hiding his unease. As you command, Your Majesty. As the Admiral left the chamber, Kyung-tae returned to his throne, his mind racing. The rogue faction posed a greater threat than he'd anticipated, but he refused to let them win. No matter the cost, he would crush them before they could inspire others to rise against him. Back aboard the Aegis Dawn, preparations for the coalition began in earnest. Jeho volunteered to act as an intermediary, using his knowledge of Imperial tactics to anticipate their moves. His decision wasn't easy. It meant severing ties with the Empire forever. But as he watched the rogue faction's crew working together, united by a shared vision, he knew it was the right choice. On the day of departure, Minsu approached Jeho one final time. Are you ready for this? He asked, his voice steady. Jeho nodded, gripping the railing of the observation deck. I don't know what lies ahead, but for the first time in a long time, I feel hope. Minsu smiled faintly. Then let's give the galaxy something worth fighting for. With that, the Aegis Dawn launched into hyperspace, leaving behind the remnants of the Empire's fleet. Ahead lay uncharted territory, filled with challenges and opportunities. Whatever happened next, Jeho knew one thing for certain.